voltage divider, current divider إن شاء الله we will cover it the next topic إن شاء الله week 5 يعني يوم ندش KCL KVL كنت بشرح وياهم ال current divider وال voltage divider very easy rules وبشرحهم هناك. Now to start with the basics of electricity عندكم two main equations اللي لازم تعرفونهم اللي هو V is equal to IR which is also known as Ohm's law. طبعا تقدرون تغيرون الايكويشن بأي طريقة عشان to find R or I or V. وعندكم الباور law اللي هو P is equal to I times V. مثل ما تشوفون هني عندكم السيركل you have the كل الرولز بيعطونكم اياها في الامتحان فمو لازم تحفظون هالشيء ولكن if you practice enough trust me you will have them memorized طول حياتكم. هذيل القانونين are the most important two rules in all of electricity. في كل شيء تطبقونه في كل شيء بتستخدمونه so you guys need to understand them very very well. مثل ما تلاحظون last time I talked about this a lot. V equals IR when current goes up and resistance is constant زين voltage will have to also go up. نفس الشيء ويا الباور إذا الفولتج كان constant والcurrent is increased الباور will also increase. هاي النقطة مهمة جدا. ليش؟ لأن حتى في حالة إذا عندكم V equal IR إذا عندكم الريزيستنس قاعد يرتفع زين والفولتج مثلا constant معناته الكرنت عندكم قاعد ينزل زين. ف obviously it applies to everything. This is very important to understand or very important to you when you are using it, you are understanding why you are using these equations. Let's go directly into some basic questions من week 2 اللي هو أكثر كله power. So السؤال يقول an electric heater consumes 1.2 megajoules. Now it is very important to understand the prefixes اللي هم هذا الميجا الكيلو الملي هالسوالف and you have to always use the standard units. إنزين فأول شيء before I go into this there is one more equation. Energy إنزين power is equal to energy over time. Energy is in joules, time is in seconds. The power will be in watts. هني في V equal IR R resistance is in ohms اللي هو كذي. current is in amperes زين voltage is in volts. تمام هذيل اليونتس الستاندرد يونتس you have to always have standard units عشان يطلع لكم الجواب صح. يعني لو معطينكم اياه ملي امبير او معطينكم ميجا جولز لازم تحولونه لجولز او تحولونه لفولتس او لامبيرز او لاومز to solve. So now an electric heater consumes 1.9 megajoules. فعندنا الانرجي E is equal to 1.9 ميجا جولز. أول step نحول هذا لجولز. ميجا معناته times 10 to the power of 6. تمام؟ ف E is equal to 1.9 times 10 to the power of 6 joules. هاي أول step. When connected to a 242 volts supply. فال V is equal to 242 volts for 46 minutes. 46 minutes. فمعطينا التايم T is equal to 46 minutes. طبعا لازم نحول المينتس إلى seconds. لازم دائما نحول لseconds. Okay, so when converting to seconds we just multiply by 60 to get it to seconds. لأن الدقيقة فيها 60 seconds. ف 46 times 60 it's 2760 seconds. Okay. Now we read the question. The power rating of the heater will be اللي هو بما معناه we need to find power P. We know that P is equal to energy over time. The power is energy over time. عندنا الانرجي 1.9 times 10 to the power of 6 over in joules طبعا over the time in seconds which is 2760. Simply you will get 688.41 watts. فهذا الباور طلعنا الباور easy. Okay, we found the power. Now يسألكم the current drawn from the supply will be in amperes. يعني انتبهوا أهم شيء في السؤال how it's asking الunits. يعني هني قاعد يسأل for watts. هني قاعد يسأل in amperes. فإحنا طلعنا هني جواب الباور in watts. Now we want to find the current in amperes. Current كيف شو نعرف relation between power and current? Power is equal to I times V. فلو نبغى نطلع current is just going to be simply power over voltage اللي هو يساوي 688.41 over الفولتج معطينا 242 volts. نحطها في الكالكوليتر. power is going to be current is going to be 2.84 amperes. This is how you will always be using the relations. This is a very basic question. You have to always understand these equations عشان تعرفون كيف تطبقونهم. You need to know how to relate current with voltage with power, which equations you need to use. That is the whole trick. Let's look at another question. Let's look at this one. يقول لكم an EMF of 246 volts. فمعطينكم الفولتج 246 volts. V is equal to 246 volts. إنزين مرات بيقولون لكم EMF مرات حتى ممكن يقولون لكم PD اللي هو potential difference. These are all voltage. تمام؟ is connected across a resistance and the current flowing through the resistance is 3.4 amps. فنعرف ال I is equal to 3.4 amps. Alright? The power developed will be يعني يبون نحصل الباور. What's power؟ بس شنو اليونتس ماله؟ أهم شيء تشوفون اليونتس. شنو اليونتس؟ يبونه in kilowatts. إنزين فيبون الجواب in kilowatts. فإحنا بنحل أول شيء normally فنعرف إن P is equal to IV يعني بنضربهم بس 3.4 times 246 يساوي 836.4 watts. احنا الحين حصلنا الجواب in watts ولكن احنا نبغاه in kilowatts. This is a very important thing to know. فإذا أنتم عندكم 1 watt انزين أو بالأصح 1 kilowatt يساوي 1000 watts صح؟ ف1 watt بيساوي 1 over 1000 watts أو بطريقة ثانية نقدر نقول 10 to the power of 3 هني وهني 10 to the power of minus 3 watts. تمام؟ sorry kilowatts. زين فال1 watt is 10 to the power minus 3 kilowatts وال1 kilowatt is 10 to the power of 3 watts. فاحنا هني شو عندنا؟ عندنا يا in watts. فاحنا عندنا هذا الفورم in watts. So what do we have to do? We have to multiply by 10 to the power minus 3 عشان يطلع لنا الجواب in kilowatts. ف power is going to be equal to 836.4 times 10 to the minus 3 kilowatts اللي هو يساوي 0.8364 kilowatts. إنزين الجواب يقول up to 2 decimal places. ف you look at the 2 decimal places, you do your rounding. 6 is greater than 5. معناته here we will do plus 1. The final answer will be 0.84 kilowatts. This is the most important thing, knowing how to convert units للunits اللي طالبينها منكم. تمام? So make sure you practice your unit conversion very well. نروح للي بعده. These are very easy. I'm gonna try to go through them very quickly. بعد مرة a source EMF of 5 volts معطينا 5 volts فvoltage is equal to 5 supplies a current of 3 amps I is equal to 3 amps for 5 minutes time is equal to 5 minutes 5 minutes نضربه ب 60 عشان نحصل seconds T is equal to 300 seconds. Okay. We found يعني عندنا الحين كل المعطيات ف we just go find what the question wants. The energy is provided at this time will be فيبون الانرجي ويبون in كيلو جولز فيبون نحصل ال E in كيلو جولز. زين not in joules in كيلو جولز. Again first step is to find the power لأنه we know we can relate energy to power. We know power is IV اللي هو 3 times 5 معناته 15 watts. هاي الباور. We also know that power is energy over time. عشان نحصل energy يساوي power times time. بما معناه energy is equal to power is 15 watts with time is 300 seconds. فبيساوي 15 times 300 which is 4500 joules. ولكن شو احنا we want it in kilojoules. So to convert this into kilojoules, انزين, again, same idea. We have joules. We want it to go into kilo. So we have to multiply by 10 to the power minus 3 عشان نروح للكيلوجولز. فبيستوي energy is going to be equal to 4500 times 10 to the power minus 3 kilojoules اللي يساوي 4.500 كيلو جولز. تمام؟ very simple, very straightforward. السؤال يقول up to 2 decimal places. فهني 0 less than 5. Obviously يعني الrounding هني is very obvious, which is going to just be 4.50 kilo joules. تمام? Now, we have another question here. A DC electric motor consumes 39 megajoules. This is exactly the same as the very first question. I'm not going to solve it, but I'll go over it very quickly. And then a 39 megajoules, you will have to convert this into joules. زين. Mega معناته times 10 to the power of 6. بعدين عندكم connected to a 234 volts. فعندنا الvoltage. Voltage is given. وعندنا time, which is in hours, but we need to convert it into seconds. For 1.5 hours, then what you will have to do is multiply by 3600. أو to make it easier, then عشان تفهمون, you have 60 minutes in 1 hour or 60 seconds in 1 minute. فيعني 60 times 60, which is 3600. That's how you will convert the time into seconds. Once you convert the time into seconds, عندنا إياه in seconds. إنزين. فعندنا الانرجي in joules. عندنا الانرجي. عندنا التايم. We can find power. Power is just E over T. إنزين. هاي حصلنا part A. Part B, they want the current. Current, again, P is equal to IV. So I is simply equal to power over voltage. Yes, and that's how you solve it. Similar exactly to the very first question. Let's do this one. Okay. Now, هني لازم تركزون وتتأكدون قاعدين تقرون كل الunits correctly. This is the important part here is making sure you don't get confused by the units. And if an electric fire supplied at 226 volts فمعطينا الvoltage 226 volts. Voltage is equal to 226 volts with a resistance of 17 ohms. For 17 ohms هو R. Resistance R is 17 ohms. Has a tariff imposed of 322 fils per kilowatt hour. شو معناته هالشيء؟ معناته يكلف 322 fils لكل كيلووات اور يستخدم. شو معناته كيلووات اور؟ هاي كيلووات اور. What does it mean? This kilowatt hour. Power is in kilowatts, صح ولا لا؟ Time is hours. زين. فenergy is equal to power times time مثل ما قلنا قبل. لا لأن power is equal to energy over time. فenergy يساوي power times time. فالenergy بيكون كيلووات اور أو in joules بيكون watt second اللي هو يساوي joules. تمام؟ what do you do here? هني احنا نبغى يكون الجواب مالنا in kilowatt hour. ما نبغى يكون in watt second اللي هو الستاندرد unit اللي نستخدمه. when we find our energy is going to be in kilowatt hour. ما نبغى احنا نطلعه in joules. فلازم نتأكد ان what we are multiplying is going to be يعني the power we are always going to use it as kilowatt hour هني. والtime لازم يتم in hours عشان نحصل الجواب in kilowatt per hour to satisfy the question. And you will see how now. فالسؤال يقول the cost of electricity for running for 5 hours يعني time عطانا يساوي 5 hours. زين will be فيبون يعرفون الكوست. الكوست هني how much is the cost. زين the cost مثل ما نعرف احنا الكوست per energy. معطينا هني الكوست per energy. الفلس per energy. This is energy E and this is the cost. خلينا نقول له C. فنعرف ان C over E cost per energy يساوي 322 fils per kilowatt hour. زين هذا اللي معطينا اياه في السؤال. Yeah, okay. Now we can start solving the question. ف معطينا الفولتج، معطينا الريزيستنس. Remember we need either just voltage and resistance or voltage and current or just resistance and current، ونقدر نحل حق كل شيء في السؤال. فهني معطينا الفولتج والريزيستنس، فمعطينا ال V وال R، فاحنا نبغى نحصل الباور in terms of V and R. لو تروحون تشوفون في السيركل at the very beginning، مو لازم تحفظون، هو كيف يكون، هو عادة اللي تسوون المفروض تعوضون الأومز لو في الباور لو، ولكن طالما معطينكم هذا استفيدوا منه. فاحنا معطينا كانوا الفولتج والريزيستنس، معطينا الفولتج والريزيستنس، فاعطينا فلازم نستخدم هاي الايكويشن اللي هو باور واتس اللي نبغى نطلعه. زين خلينا bring this down عشان نشوفه في السؤال واحنا نستخدمه. زين احنا عندنا الفي وعندنا ال R we want to find power, so we will use this equation. P is equal to V squared over R اللي هو voltage معطينا إياه 226 over resistance معطينا إياه 17. اوكي squared هذا بيكون voltage squared over resistance. فالباور بيساوي power is going to be equal to 3004.47 watts. Okay, this is the power 3004.47 watts. Keep in mind احنا نبغى نطلع الباور وات in كيلو واتس، فاحنا نبغى نحول هذا الى كيلو واتس، نبغى كيلو واتس. عشان نسوي هالشيء we have to multiply by 10 to the minus 3. فالباور بيساوي 3004.47 times 10 to the minus 3 كيلو watts. زين we just simplify this. P is going to be equal to 0. لا مو بزيرو sorry، بيكون 3.004 زين كيلو واتس. فطلعنا الباور. Now we want to find the energy. We have the power, we have the time, we can find energy. Energy is equal to power times time. صح ولا لا؟ power times time. فعندنا الباور in kilowatts لأن احنا we want the energy in what? We want it in kilowatt hour. عشان شي حولنا هذا إلى kilowatt. So we will put the power 3.004 times time. Just to be more clear, this is 3.004 kilowatt times the time, which is given to be 5 hours. So 5 hours. All right. When we multiply this, energy is going to be equal to 15.022 kilowatt hour. لأن قاعدين نضرب الكيلووات ويا الhour فيستوي kilowatt hour. Now we have the energy in kilowatt hour. We need to find the cost, C. We know that C over E is equal to 322 fils per kilowatt hour. تمام؟ فإذا نبغى نحصل السي بروحه بس بنودي الإي صوب الثاني، فبيكون 322 fils per kilowatt hour times E. هذا هو الكوست مالنا. فالكوست الحين نعوض عن الإي 322 fils per kilowatt hour. الإي is 15.022 kilowatt hour. لو تلاحظون الكيلووات اور والكيلووات اور بيتكنسل، فبيطلع لنا الجواب النهائي in fils. فالكوست يساوي 4837 fils. Now نرجع للسؤال. السؤال كان يقول يبال cost in what؟ يبال cost in BD دينار، ما يبال بالفلس، يبال بالدينار. We know that 1 BD is equal to 1000 fils. صح ولا لا؟ 1 BD يكون فيه 1000 fils. So we need to convert this cost into BD. C is equal to 4837 fils. We want it in BD, so we want to cancel el fils. 1 BD has 1000 fils. We multiply it this way. بتشوفون الفلس ويا الفلس بيتكنسل والجواب النهائي بيكون البي دي. Therefore the cost is going to be equal to 4.84 BD when you round to 2 اللي هو I'll do the rounding مرة واحدة عشان ما تتلخبطون. 4.837 BD. السؤال يقول ما يقول السؤال كم، بس عادة احنا البي دي we usually calculate it up to 2 decimal places. انزين، فيعني هاي الجواب صح، there is nothing wrong with it. بس if you want to do the rounding it's going to be 4.84 لأن هذا greater than 5 so we have to do plus 1 هني 4.84 BD. This is how you would solve such a question. Is it clear? Very easy إن شاء الله. يعني هذا ممكن يكون أصعب سؤال يجيكم من week 2 بالكامل. I will do one more question from week 2 and then I'll move on to week 3. Very basic, very simple question. A 9 watt power resistor. فمعطينا الواتج 9 watt power. فpower is equal to 9 watts. Alright. Has 50 resistance. معطينا resistance الأوم. يعني R يساوي 50 ohm. Okay. Now we have power and resistance. We can find everything else. We can find voltage. We can find current. We can find it all. زين. Find the maximum amount of current. فthey want us to find current. We need to find I. Then through the resistance. How do you find it? Again, we go back to the circle اللي عندنا. زين. Very easy. Just use the circle to make it easier for yourself in the exam. عندكم ال power وعندكم ال resistance. فتشوفون أول شيء إحنا شنو بنحصل؟ بنحصل الأمبس. فبنطالع إحنا this part of the circle. إحنا we want to find لأن ال I. So we're gonna look at the I. شنو معطينا؟ معطينا ال P وال R. Which equation has P and R? It's this part. This part, this equation has the P and the R. فسيدا نقدر نكتب I is equal to the square root of P over R. يعني square root of 9 over 50 ohms اللي بيساوي 400 sorry كم بيساوي 0.42426 أمبير. ولكن السؤال يقول the current value يبقى in what in milli ampere. احنا عندنا اياه in ampere. تمام. بس quick revision of units. 1 ampere يساوي 1000 milli ampere or 10 to the power of 3 milli ampere. فإذا بنروح من 1 ampere لملي ampere بنضرب ب 10 to the power 3. إذا بنروح من milli ampere يعني 1 milli ampere يساوي 1 over 1000 ampere اللي هو يساوي 10 to the minus 3 أمبير. فإذا بنروح من ملي أمبير لأمبير بنضربه ب 10 minus 3. إذا بنروح من أمبير إلى ملي أمبير بنضربه ب 10 to the power of 3. ففي هالحالة here we want it to go into milli ampere ف we will multiply by 10 to the power of 3. So I is equal to 0.42426 times 10 to the power of 3 milli ampere. If we simplify this, I is equal to 424.26 milliampere. And that's it. لو تشوفون the trick here is mainly not using equations, it's knowing how to do your conversion of units. تتأكدون ان عندكم إذا يبون milliampere, you change it to milliampere or change it to ampere. This is the most important part. This is all of week 2. It's very straightforward. It's just knowing how to use your power equations and V equal IR. Anyone has any questions about this so far? I think it's pretty direct. So if you have any questions, let me know. Come on. Going on to week 3. Week 3 is just Ohm's law, which is the same thing we are using يعني so far. قبل شوي كنا we were using power law mostly. الحين بنستخدم Ohm's law اللي هو V equal IR. تمام. السؤال يقول the current flowing through a heating element is 5 amperes. ف I is equal to 5 ampere. When a PD معناته potential difference. That's what PD stands for, which also means voltage. تمام. ف with a voltage or when a potential difference of 35 volts is applied. 35 volts. فالV يساوي 35 volts. Find the resistance of the element. For we know that V is equal to IR. So R is equal to V over I. which is equal to 35 over 5, which is equal to 7 ohms. Very straightforward, very direct. You can also use a circle if you're not that confident in your math skills. You can use the circle directly. احنا شنو بنحصل؟ بنحصل R. نحصل R نطالع هني على ال R part. اوكي. عندنا V و I فبنستخدم ال V over I equation directly من الcircle. تمام؟ This is basically what potential, the idea here is knowing potential PD means voltage, potential difference, and applying the basic Ohm's law. Now, هني عندنا determine the PD which must be applied, PD determine it, so we need to know the voltage to a 2K resistor. R is equal to 2K ohms. شو يعني 2K؟ 2K معناته 2 كيلو ohms. فلازم نحوله هذا إلى ohms. ف 2 كيلو بيستوي 2000 ohms. تمام؟ كيلو سهلة المفروض الكل يعرفه. 1 كيلو يعني 1000 من الشيء. ف 2K ohms معناته 2000 ohms. عادة they usually when you're talking about a resistor in kilos they just call it 2K, 3K, 4K كذي. Such that a current of 4 milliamperes may flow. So I is equal to 4 milliampere. milliampere عشان نروح من milli إلى ampere بنسوي times 10 to the minus 3 ampere. تمام؟ أو if you want to do the conversion the old way فملي ampere زين times احنا شنو نبغى amperes زين تحت بيكون ملي ampere. 1 ampere has 1000 milliamperes in it. زين milliampere and milliampere will cancel, which is going to be exactly the same thing, which is 4 times 10 to the minus 3 or 4 over 1000. Now, to solve the question, we need to determine the voltage or potential difference. So what is simply the equation that we will use? Voltage, we're looking at voltage. We have current and resistance. So V is equal to IR, which is equal to 4 times 10 to the minus 3 times 2000 ohms. So V is equal to 8 volts. Tamam? Now, everything clear so far? Now we will go into parallel and series. So everything is clear so far. How to use the circle, power law, Ohm's law, very straightforward. Now, let's look at the next question. اللي هو هذا. زين. Here I'm gonna be explaining a lot of extra things يعني مو بس هذا that will help with the next future weeks. Okay. A circuit. هاي أول مرة I think we look at a circuit properly. All right. So this is what a circuit is. This is a voltage source. زين. Voltage source. Voltage source. أو يسمونه مرات power source بس usually this plus minus معناته it's a voltage source. They're calling this a resistor. Another way of drawing the circuit is going to be something like this. زين. This is another symbol for resistance اللي المفروض تعرفونه الحين. This is another way of writing it. فهاي R1 هاي R2 plus or minus هاي الvoltage source اللي عندنا إياه. زين. We know that current is flowing, or we are assuming that current is flowing in this direction. I الcurrent مالنا. So it's going through all of these. Now يوم احنا يكون عندنا a simple circuit like this, if we do not know the direction of current, we are usually always assuming that it's going out from the positive end of the voltage source. فتشوفون هنا عندنا البلس زين فقاعد يطلع من البوزيتيف end. It's always exiting the positive end. It's just an assumption. We might be wrong, but most of the time this is the case. And then when we want to put the polarities for R1 and R2, معناته we are assuming that this is the direction of the voltage. What does that mean? We talk about potential difference. زين. We talk about potential difference. معناته عندنا هني V voltage صح؟ هاي ال V نفس هاي ال V. يعني this line has all the same voltage الأزرق كامل. it's the same voltage. تمام. هني بيكون عندنا voltage اتغير الحين. الفولتج هني اتغير لأن it went through a component. تمام. When it goes through a component there is a voltage difference. So let's call this V2 مثلا. All right. What does this mean? This means that the voltage V to V2, all right, قاعد يعني it's going from V as positive and reaching V2 as negative. This is what it means. معناته if we want to find the voltage across R, the voltage across it, it's going to be V minus V2. تمام? This is what this means. I don't want you guys to get so confused about this now. بعدين we will go more into detail about it. What I want you guys to understand is one, the polarity. فإحنا الكرنت قلنا it's going upwards into this direction. معناته الكرنت is going like this throughout the circuit. Okay? وبعدين يوصل للsource itself. So the current now is going into the resistor. The standard notation is always going to be positive here, where the current is entering, and negative where the current is exiting. نفس الشيء for all the components, not the voltage source, but for the components اللي هم resistors يعني بشكل عام. Alright? وكل مرة it goes through a component, the voltage is changing, but the current is staying the same. تشوفون الكرنت كامل أخضر. الكرنت ما يتأثر بالcomponent. When a current goes through a component, it stays exactly the same. Alright? We will see later when the current is changing, but in this case it will stay the same. تمام? And then again, same idea. When it goes through R2, we're gonna have another voltage going down here. High purple part. This is a completely different voltage. All right. So this is gonna, let's call it V3 مثلا. عادة, we usually say that this is the ground voltage and we equate it to 0 based on us, based on what we're grounding. Usually يعني when we're doing the circuits, we always go look at the negative part اللي هو هني, minus, and we say that this is the zero part or the ground zero مالنا. إنه ما يكون في any voltage يعني V3 is equal to 0 usually depending on the circuit we choose. All right. طبعا you guys can usually choose the ground at any point in the circuit, but I don't want to go too much into detail about that. You will see that more later on inshallah. زين. But I want you to understand the idea إن في voltage. هني الفولتج الأزرق is equal to this voltage V of the source. زين. This voltage plus V, it's the same voltage, all right, of the source. When it goes through a component, the voltage is changing. When it goes through another component, the voltage changes again, and then it goes back to the source. تمام? That is the whole idea. But the current, when it goes through components, it stays the same. يعني هني عندنا I. هني عندنا I. هني عندنا I. This is what we call a series circuit. All right? This is what a series circuit looks like. تمام؟ وهل كنت تحسب الفولتج دروب على شو؟ على 2؟ هو الفولتج دروب يعني I don't want to go too much into detail about that, but what we call here when it goes from this side to this side, يعني when it goes from the blue side to the red side, this is what we say there's going to be a voltage drop across the resistor. يعني الvoltage is changing from one voltage to another and it's obviously going to drop لأن it's being يعني absorbed by the resistor. فالvoltage drop اللي قبل كنت أحسبه اللي كنت أقول لك, the voltage across is V minus V2. This is what they call the voltage drop across R1. All right. Same thing هني across R2 حق R2 هو V2 minus V3. This is what they call the voltage drop across R2. What does that mean? معناته ان voltage is changing لأن في resistance in the way and the current is not changing. Remember before I was saying إذا عندنا إحنا equation V equal IR. إذا الحين قاعد أقول لكم I is constant. Okay. لكن الحين resistance is going up. voltage has to go up with it. This is the whole idea. فهني عندنا resistance, فعندنا قبل voltage which is up. But when it goes through the resistance, the voltage it's dropping now لأن resistance قاعد يقل. لأن الحين كان هني component we have resistance in the component بعدين هني it's just wire, it's not a resistant, it's just a wire, so there will be a drop of voltage across the resistor from a specific voltage to another. That is the whole concept of voltage drop. Don't get too confused by all of this. This is just the basic theory of a circuit, and we will discuss it more and more later on, inshallah. But I want you guys to understand that the voltage is changing in a series circuit, whereas the current is staying the exact same across this circuit at all times because they are connected in series. Another thing I want to comment about series circuits. فإحنا عندنا this circuit صح؟ عندنا هالcircuit. This is R1, R2. All right, plus, minus. This is our voltage. نقدر نرد نرسم الcircuit. Remember that these lines, okay, we can redraw the circuit. Why? Because remember, these lines are all just wires. إنزين؟ تخيلوا in real life when you have wires إذا حركتوا الوايرات ما يستوي شيء. إذا تحركونهم يعني الحين when your phone charger is charging إذا أنتوا تحركون الواير تلفونه you're spinning it أو قاعدين تودونه يمين يسار يسار زين ضرب التشيكن ناجت اللي في العرج يوم قاعدين يتحركونه يمين يسار the voltage is يعني the voltage is not changing ما قاعد يستوي faster charging or slower charging ما يستوي شيء. It's a wire, you can move it around as much as you want as long as the connection points are the same. يعني يوم انتم موصلين الواير في التشارجر وفي التليفون ما قاعدين تاثرون في هذا بس تحركون الواير فوق وتحت, it is exactly the same thing. So keep in mind these are all just wires between the components. You can move them around as in any way you want. So you can redraw this. And this is completely the same circuit. You can redraw it like this, where this is R1 and R2. شو اللي سوينا؟ الحين هذا الواير بس سويناه سيده. we just made it flat يعني straight. ما غيرنا ولا شيء في السيركت. this wire at the bottom here, it's the same wire connecting the same two components. اللهم طولناه شوي. إنه حركناه شوي. And this initial wire that's coming from the voltage source to the resistor, it's also the same thing. It is very important to understand this لأن you're going to look at a lot of circuits and you're going to be confused whether it's in parallel, in series when it gets a bit more complicated. But remember that the wire is in between as long as there is no other components connected to it. يعني هني this red wire, there is no components here or there's no extra wire somewhere else. You can just move this around freely and you will look at the same exact circuit. Nothing is changing. So you notice now here clearly that R1 and R2 are in series. So this is a series circuit. All right. So now let's actually get to solving the question. And then the question has many parts, but first I want to talk about the law for resistances in series. So again, this is a series circuit. A series circuit معناته resistance, total resistance across the circuit, the whole circuit, يساوي R1 plus R2. بس in series it's very simple. الفولتج total across the circuit زين اللي هني سميناه V بيساوي V1 plus V2. لازم الفولتج يعني كامل, this is a closed circuit, لازم كل الفولتج that's being distributed equal to the voltage that is being supplied. Anything going in has to equal everything going out. زين والcurrent I total يساوي I1 ويساوي I2, or sometimes we just name it as I لأن they are all equal. This is the case for all series circuit or all series connections. Resistances, the total resistance in series are just going to be added up. The total voltage can be just added up. And the current, the total current is always the same throughout the entire circuit, okay? Any questions so far about this? Anything you want me to re-explain? Anything not so clear about this قبل ما نحل السؤال؟ لأن this is very important to know for everything that we will do in the future via electric circuits. Okay, I assume everyone knows everything. Let's start solving the actual questions now. Looking at the same circuit, إنزين قولوا لنا that V is equal to 12 volts. إنزين, so this is the circuit. V is equal to 12 volts. إنزين, resistor R1 is equal to 400 ohms. R1. R2 is equal to 395 ohms, if I'm not mistaken. So, yes, 395 ohms. Okay? They are in series. Now we can look at the questions, so many questions that they have here. Let's take just all of them مرة واحدة and do them one shot. Week 3. Insane. For the first question says, find the total resistance of the circuit. Very easy. R total is equal to R1 plus R2, which is equal to 400 plus 395. So it's simply just equal to R total is going to be equal to 795 ohms. Tamam? Very straightforward, the total resistance of the circuit. Then the next question says, find the total current flowing in the circuit. Now, this is another concept I want to go over. بس عشان تكونوا فاهمين. الحين this is the circuit we have. All right? This is the circuit that we have. Remember, V is equal to IR بشكل عام. صح? So V total is going to be equal to I, and since current is the same across the circuit anywhere we go, it's just I, it's equal to R total. زين? So إذا نبغى نحصل V across R1 أو V1 بنسميه, it is going to be exactly the same thing, current times R1. V2 is going to be current times R2. This is in the case of series connections. ليش؟ لأن V total is just the total voltage اللي هو هني معطينا إياه ك 12 volt. زين؟ It will depend on the total resistance of the circuit, but the current is not changing. The current is going to be the same in all cases. However, the resistances will change and the voltages will change. تمام? So this is the case for all series connections. Let me just move this a bit to the side. Find the total current flowing. So that's going to be I. So we have V total and we have R total. So we're going to use this equation. صح؟ حصلنا ال R total هني. Well, V total is just this one. This is equal to V total. I is equal to V total over R total. So I is simply going to be equal to 12 over 795. I is equal to 0.01509 ampere. And we found the current. This current is going throughout the entire circuit. This I is the same I that is going out throughout the entire circuit as we saw earlier. It is the same I. This is I. Tamam? It's the exact same current. Keep in mind, the question says milliamps. So we need to multiply by 10 to the power of 3 عشان نحصل milliamps. I is going to be equal to 15.09 milliamps. Tamam? This is how you would solve it for a series circuit, how to find the current. Now, it is asking for the voltage drop. The voltage drop across the resistor VR1 in volts. Okay? بعد, again, you will use the exact same equations that we used up here. فالحين, now we have I. So V1 is equal to I times R1. I طلعناه. R1, we already have R1, the resistances, it's given. So we simply just substitute here. 0.01509. Remember, this has to be in amperes. Do not take it in milliamperes. The current has to be in amperes. Times the resistance in ohm. R1 was 400 ohms. And that's it. So V1 is equal to 6.04 volts. All right. This is the voltage drop across R1. Remember here when we said V minus V2, فمعناته V minus V2 يساوي ال V1 هذا. This is what it is. يعني if we are comparing voltage drop to the earlier example, V minus V2 is going to be equal to V1. Don't confuse yourself. This V2 is not the same as the V2 we will find next, but this is the voltage drop I am talking about. All right. We will do later on inshallah examples يعني in the next session when we are going into KCL KVL to understand better شو مقصود بالvoltage drop. For this voltage drop V1 is 6.04 volts. As you can see, you just use Ohm's law وانتهى الموضوع. Now it says the voltage drop across the resistor 2. Again, same thing. V2 is equal to I times R2. So it's equal to 0.01509 amperes times 395 ohms. So V2 is going to be equal to 5.96 volts. Remember one thing. زين صح خلصنا يعني من السؤال الحين بس remember one thing. What did I say earlier? In series, the V total is equal to V1 plus V2. So we can use that to check this. We know that V total is equal to 12 volts in the circuit. We can use that to check these two if they are correct. So we know V total is equal to V1 plus V2. زين V total we already know from the circuit given is 12 volts. V total is equal to what? V1 is 6.04 plus 5.96. So V total is equal to 12 volts. It is correct. This is just to check, nothing else. أو instead of using V equal IR هني, you could have used the V total equation and did 12 minus 6.04 عشان تطلعون هذا الجواب. تمام؟ You can you can use a lot of different ways to solve questions. You just need to find out what is faster or what is easier for you to solve. Now moving on to power. زين power, very very simple, same exact concept. Power is equal to I times V. صح؟ I is constant but power is changing. احنا نبغى power across 1 ليش؟ لأن voltage is changing. ف P1 و V1. And we know that the voltage is constant, the current is constant. So the current is not going to change. So this is going to be equal to, again, the current, we have it from earlier, 0.01509. 0.01509. Again, it has to be in amperes, remember? Tamam? Times V1, which we found from the question earlier, which is 6.09. So P1 is equal to, we just multiply these two, and we are going to get 0.09114 watts. However, السؤال يقول نبغى in milliwatts, so we have to multiply by 10 to the power of 3 عشان نروح من watts ل milliwatts. زين? So power is going to be 91.14 milliwatts. I used P equals IV. You could have also used P is equal to I squared R or P is equal to V squared over R. ولكن في حق P1 we have to use R1 and V1 over R1. طبعا يعني لأنه if it's for 1 we're going to have to put 1. I is constant, so I1 is equal to I anyways. All right? So I is constant. You could have used these two equations as well. These also would have worked to find the power. على حسب اللي أريح لكم أسهل لكم, whichever you want to choose. تمام? These equations again are also available in the circle, the Ohm's law circle. So you could just refer to that. Again, same thing. P2 is equal to I times R2. Sorry, times V2. We're talking about power. So I times V2. Yes, and that's it. We have I again, same as the same current. It does not change. 0.01509 amperes times الحين voltage 2, which is 5.96 volts. 5.96 volts. So P2 is going to be equal to 0.0900 شيء كذي زين watts. And then again the question is asking in milliwatts, so we multiply this by 10 to the power of 3 عشان نطلع in milliwatts. So it's going to be 90.00 milliwatts. تمام? Now the last question. It's asking for the total power. It's asking total power supplied by the source. زين? For now we're talking about P total is equal to I times V total. This is one way of doing it. Okay, we can solve it this way. So this is going to be equal to 0.01509 amperes times the total voltage, which was 12 by the power source. لا, source power معطينا إياه. It's 12 volts. So times 12. So PT is simply going to be equal to 0.18114 watts. Again, question says in milliwatts. So PT, we're going to have to multiply by 10 to the minus 3. 10 to the plus 3. Then we're going from watts to milliwatts. It's going to be equal to 181.14. Now notice something here, milliwatts. If you add P1 and P2, 90 plus 90 is 180, so 181.14. The P total is equal to that. So note that P total is always going to be equal to power 1 plus power 2, meaning total power from the source is equal to power consumed by resistor 1 plus power consumed by resistor 2. Obviously يعني يوم انتوا قاعدين تعطون power, it has to be going somewhere. It cannot just disappear into the air. So it will be going into the resistor. So the total power of a source has to be equal to the total power across all the components that are in the circuit. Is series clear? Is everything clear with series so far? حد عنده أي أسئلة? Anything not clear about what I've solved? Okay, ممتاز. I will go into parallel. Just let's take a 5 minutes break. 11:05, we'll be back. And then just a 5 minutes break. Back. It's 11:05. We will go into parallel. وبعد البارallel إن شاء الله we will do week 4 يعني شكله بنلحق. We will do reduction of resistances وكل هذا and we will try to solve that. وبعدها we can يعني next session we can start with KCL, KVL and maybe even Maxwell's إن شاء الله. Then 5 minutes break and I'll be back. سجاد بنشوف complex circuits بعدين يعني by complex قصدك mathematical complex يعني فيهم I و J ولا قصدك إن circuit يكون شكله كذي resistor 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 كذي قصدك؟ إيه بتشوف الحين بنحلها. This is week 4 we will look at it إن شاء الله. بنحلها اليوم يعني البارallel series combined. بس أول شيء I want to make sure everyone understands properly parallel, everyone understands properly series by themselves عشان يوم يحلون مع بعض combined they know how to approach it. Okay, just a quick recap بعد مرة عن series. Just a very quick recap before I go into parallel. Remember that in series, the current is not changing when it's going through components. The voltage is changing when it goes through a component. زين. And the total resistance is equal to R1 plus R2. This is the most important thing you need to know. All right. Now we're going to look at a parallel question, how parallel series circuits work. All right. فالparallel, obviously, it's going to be a little bit different. Okay. لو تلاحظون, if I just redraw the circuit, I want to draw it properly عشان أقدر أشرح properly. So we have the voltage source given. Then we're going to have a resistor. Okay. I'm going to have a resistor here, R1, and a resistor here, R2. And this is our voltage source, plus minus voltage. If I remember in series, when I said the voltage, it goes across the wire and it only drops when it goes through a component, صح? For this blue part, all of it has the same voltage. كامل هني, it's the same voltage. All right? This is all V, which is equal V total, which is equal to the voltage source itself. يعني this V is the same as this V من السورس نفسه. So you notice that the voltage source itself, the voltage going to the components is equal in both cases. The voltage is not changing. يعني V is equal to V1, which is equal to V2, which is equal to V total بعد, the total voltage. All right? لأنه it's not going through any components. However, if you notice now the current, when it's flowing, it is changing. Here, it's الواير قاعد يستوي نصين. The current is being split into two parts, not into half. It depends on the resistances, but it's being split into two parts. One is going into this direction and another one is going into that direction. فهني the current is going the same. هني طبعا بعد if I use the orange, هني the voltage is also the same. Then let's call this V0 مثلا. Okay, the voltage here is also the same, and usually we consider this as ground, so we call this 0 usually. And I will explain it a bit more in a bit, but first let's look at the current. The current, like you see, it's two different currents going into each other, and then when they regroup here at this point over here, when they're regrouping, it comes back to be the total current again. So you notice that the current here now is changing while the voltage is staying the same. So I total is equal to I1 plus I2. I1 being the current going through resistor 1 and I2 being the current going through resistor 2. This is parallel circuit. All right? The last thing is the resistances. Now, to find the total resistance, R total, the equation is 1 over R total is equal to 1 over R1 plus 1 over R2. هذا هو القانون حق parallel circuit for resistances. In the case if you have only, this is very important, if you have only two resistors in parallel, زين إذا عندكم بس two resistors in parallel تبون تحسبونهم, you can simplify this equation, R total is going to be equal to R1 times R2 over R1 plus R2. All right. This is a very nice way of making your life a bit easier when you want to calculate. بدال ما تحطون كل هذا في calculator وتضيعون تسوون 1 over 1 over 1 over. You can use this simplified version. This is only in the case of two resistors in parallel. When you have more than two, you're going to be using this. You're going to be using 1 over RT. يعني مثلا إذا كان عندكم كذي connected to this. All right, R1, R2, R3. Okay, this is your voltage. هني بتسوون 1 over RT is equal to 1 over R1 plus 1 over R2 plus 1 over R3. This is what I mean. You could look at, for example, only these two parts and apply this formula to it. You could, but we will look at that a bit more later. And then, but you cannot simplify all of these together. You cannot simplify all of these. يعني do not say that RT is equal to R1, R2, R3 over R1 plus R2 plus R3. This is completely wrong, okay? Wrong. Do not do this. And then, you cannot find the total resistance like this. Yes, if you are looking at only two of them, you can simplify it. But if you're looking at three resistances, you cannot do it all in one shot. And we will look a bit at this a bit more later on when we are solving in week 4. But the idea here, the concept, I want you guys to know that this is the resistance. You notice this is يعني the resistance formula. You don't just simply add them. The voltage is equal. And the current is added up. And it splits into here into 3 parts. Okay? Into 2 parts. يعني it's coming from one side and it's splitting into 2 parts. Then I want to explain one more thing. هني I want to clarify voltage potential difference أو يعني voltage across the resistances. When we have such a circuit, usually in a circuit we always have a place where we identify as a ground. I don't think they taught you this yet in or even if they taught it, I don't think they taught it properly. يعني he didn't comment on this, but usually we have to identify a location to be our ground. And most of the time we take the bottom line as our ground voltage. What does ground mean? Ground. What does ground mean? It means where voltage is assumed to be equal to 0. All right? This is what ground voltage means. Simply. All right? The whole point of ground is that you are considering the circuit to have a potential where you determine it as your zero height. يعني remember if mechanical semester اللي طاف كنتوا تسوون ladder question او ما ادري شنو او whatever انزين يكون عندكم height هني height صح؟ يكون عندكم a piece هني عندك kinetic energy potential energy all of that. هني نقول H is equal to 0 لأن this is the ground صح ولا لا؟ This is the exact same idea. The exact same idea. This is what we are considering in voltage as the ground. It could have a specific voltage compared to something else. يعني هني هذا الهايت احنا قاعدين نقول الهايت from this part is 0. لكن الهايت يمكن this is up يعني above sea level. It's 1,000 kilometers over sea level من هني لين هني. بس we are not looking at this. احنا we're only referring to this as our reference point. This is our reference point, this line. So with this reference point, H is equal to 0. This is the exact same idea of grounding in voltage. So this is what we consider our ground voltage. So if you notice now, remember what I said. احنا when we are doing polarity, نقول هني where's the current entering from up? So this is plus, minus. Current is going from the up to down. So this is plus, minus. أو خلنا أسوي بألوانهم. زين, and this is plus minus where the current is coming, entering and exiting, and we are assuming that this is the direction of current. All right, احنا because we're always dealing in electrical fundamentals with a DC source, this is always going to be correct, always going to be true where the current is flowing. When you go into AC circuit, you're going to understand that this can change a lot, but for now what you need to know is wherever the current is going, you put the polarity plus to minus, plus to minus. If you remember when I said earlier, so we know that up here we have the blue part, it's V, صح? So if we want to find the voltage drop across R1, it is equal to V minus V0. Because V0 is ground, it's equal to 0. So the voltage drop is simply equal to V. For R2, voltage drop across R2, again, same idea. It's V, لأن V, the top part, where is the plus? Plus للماينس. وين البلس؟ V, الماينس V0. فماينس V0. So the voltage drop is going to simply be equal to V. فالvoltage drop across R1 is equal to the voltage drop across R2. عشان شي احنا قاعدين نقول V is equal to V1 equal to V2 equal to the V total. This is the whole concept of ground. All right. Don't get too confused with this. يعني قاعدين نقولوا هاي من وين يسوي minus all of that. But this is a very important concept you need to know, especially when we go into more advanced stages of electrical circuits and especially in AC analysis later on. يعني year 2, year 3, inshallah. But the most important thing you guys need to know right now is voltage is not changing. Current is changing. Current is going to be equal to I1 plus I2, and it changes here. You see these nodes, this node and this node, current is changing there. And then, the total resistance, this is how you find it. So let's now start solving the question. So the first question says, let me just copy paste all of this. And then, what is the total resistance of the circuit RT? What is the total resistance of the circuit? So simply we just use the formula RT. And then let me just redraw the circuit عشان يكون شوي أوضح. Let me make these a bit smaller. Oops. ما صارت. إنزين. Let us look at the circuit again. The circuit was like this. And then a voltage هني. And then a resistor. And then a resistor. All right. This is R1, R2, plus, minus. This is V. The voltage was given to be 10 volts. So this is 10 volts. All right. R1 was given to be 440 and R2 is 300. So this is 440 ohms. And this is equal to 300 ohms. Then, so this is our circuit. Find the total resistance of the circuit. So how do you find that? Again, we just apply the equation we know. R total is equal to R1, R2 over R1 plus R2. So this is going to be 440 times 300 divided by 440 plus 300. تمام? Make some space. R total is equal to, if you just put this all into the calculator, it's going to be 178.38 ohms up to those 2 decimal places. الحين يعني we can redraw the circuit if we wanted to, plus minus. It's equivalent to this circuit where this is R total equal to 178.38. تمام? Equivalent. And the current going through here is the same current going through here. زين؟ initial current مو الكرنت مال R1 أو R2 اللي هو total current اللي هو IT. I total. Right? That is coming back through here. تمام? If we wanted to redraw the circuit, we can draw it in this way. This is what it means by finding the equivalent or the total resistance. تمام? Now, the question is asking to find the total current flowing. Again, we apply the rules that we know. V is equal to IR. Then, now since voltage is equal, voltage is not changing, but current is changing. So I total and resistance is always obviously changing. So R total. So لازم نحط ال I total وال R total هني. So this is going to be equal to, what is I total? Sorry. And we have the voltage. We can rearrange this equation. We need to find I total. It's equal to V over RT. So it's equal to voltage is given to be 10 volts over, this is 10 volts, over the total resistance, which is 178.38. So I total is equal to 0.05606. Again, this is in amperes. سؤالي يقول يبقى in milliamperes. So we're going to have to multiply by 10 to the power of 3. So I total is equal to 56.06 milliamperes. تمام? Now it's asking to find the current that is going through resistor 1. Then again, the same exact idea. V is constant, it's not changing. V then is equal to I1 R1. نقدر نقول V1 بس احنا نعرف ان V1 يساوي V2 يساوي V بس so that's why you could just use V directly عشان ما تتخربطون وايد. زين so V is equal to I1 times R1. So therefore I1 is equal to V total over R1, which is equal to 10 volts over R1 is 440. Yes, 440. And then I1 is going to be equal to 0.02273 amperes, which is not zero, it's 22.73 milliamperes. And then you guys should know now how to do the conversion. Same idea again for current flowing through the resistor R2. فنبقى احنا voltage is equal to I2 times R2. Therefore I2 is equal to V over R2, which is 10 over 300 ohms. لأن R2 is given in the question to be 300. I2 is going to be equal to 0.03333 amperes, which is 33.33 milliamperes. زين الحين the power loss across the resistor R1 فنبقى power P1 نبقى يساوي شنو؟ We can use any of the equations. Let's use the IV equation. Current is changing, so we have I1. V is not changing, it's the same voltage. So it's equal to I1. شو اللي طلعنا I1? 0.02273. Remember, this has to be in amperes, not milliamperes, times the voltage, which is 10. زين so P1 is equal to 0.2273 2273 it's 227 0.22727 okay amperes sorry watts. Again, we want this in milliwatts, so it is going to be 227.27 milliwatts. زين the reason I added 27 يعني I was going an extra decimal لأن we wanted up to do 2 decimal places the final answer فهني بيستوي 0.27 زين milliwatts. As you can see, it's super direct, super straightforward. P2, again, same idea. It's going to be I2 times V, parallel circuit. Voltage is not changing. 0.03333 ampere times 10. So P2 is going to be equal to 0.33333 watts. We want it in milliwatts, so it's 333.33 milliwatts. And now it's asking for the total power supplied. For P total is equal to I total times V. زين. Or we could say P total is equal to P1 plus P2. And the power supplied, the power اللي قاعد يجي من source, it has to be equal to the full power that is being lost across all the resistors or absorbed by the resistors. And then, so I total, we found it to be 0.05606, 0.05606 ampere times 10, which is the voltage. So power power total is going to be equal to 0.56061 watt, which is equal to 0.5, sorry, which is equal to 560.61 milliwatt. And if you check P1 plus P2, 333 plus 227 is equal to 560, so it is correct. Tamam? And this is it. This is the whole concept of parallel and series. Parallel, again, just a quick summary. Voltage is not changing across, it's not crossing any component. Voltage will only change when it's going through a component. So when they are in parallel, there are no components that it's going through. However, current is changing because we have nodes. Yani there is different lines. Lines are added. So when there are different lines, current is going to be split up. And the resistance is going to be a different equation. You're not just going to add them up. You're going to be using this equation. And that's pretty much it for week 3. Anyone has any questions about parallel and series or anything we've covered so far? And then now we are going to go into a bit more complicated questions, not too much. But we're going to look at a mixture of parallel and series together. Okay. Let's get into this. Now, I'm going to make this a bit smaller because I want to redraw it next to it. In the given series parallel circuit, لو تشوفون هنا we have mixed parallel and series. زين? They want us to find the total resistance of the circuit as seen from terminals A and B. زين? So, you know what? I don't want to solve this. I want to solve the fourth one. It's the same thing. There is a reduction. Actually, let's solve this one عشان it's a different circuit. هناك بعد different circuit بيكون عندنا different examples. So, we are given a node A and B هني. زين؟ This basically means ان عندنا فتشة يعني wire مفتوح زين تقدرون توصلونه في بالك or whatever بس ان عندنا an opening in the wire. The circuit, if I'm just going to redraw it very quickly, we have current going through here, resistor, بعدين هني عندنا resistor, بعدين هني بعد عندنا resistor, هني عندنا resistor, بعدين هني عندنا resistor. Okay, so we have R1, which is 3 ohms, and then R3, which is 1.3 ohms, and then R2, which is 8 ohms, and then R4, which is 7 ohms, and then R5, which is 8 ohms. Okay? السؤال يبغى نحصل total resistance زين of the circuit. What does that mean? They want us to find it as if the circuit was like this. كأن عندنا بس resistor واحد هاي A و B وعندنا بس resistor واحد اللي هو R total. This is what we are going to try to achieve now. زين? And we want to reach to the point where we have just this resistor. Always start from the point that is furthest from your voltage source or from your nodes اللي هم هني في هالحالة A and B. زين? You will start from the point furthest اللي هو هني and you will look at the circuit. So first thing we will look at is this part. يلا الحين I want you guys to answer me. Are these two in parallel or are they in series? زين. حد قال series وحد قال parallel. Mariam, why do you think these are in series? I am very curious how you can see these are in series. خليني I just draw just this part again, okay? So we have it like this. Like this. كذي. زين. This is R4 and R5. We're only looking at R4 and R5. Now, are they in parallel or are they in series, Maria? And in series, remember, in series, لا, the current هني I, this is just the, no worries, I'll explain it. Don't look at the current I هني. The current I is just for the current here, okay? How do you know if something is in parallel or in series? That is actually a very good question to ask. How do you know if something's in parallel or in series? Look at the connection points. هني وهني. Always look at these two connection points. وهني وهني. Okay. Are these two resistors connected from one point? Are they connected directly to the? Is there only one point of connection or are there 2 points of connections? هني عندنا 1 point or 2 points of connections? We have 2 points. So it's in parallel. If we have 1 point of connection only يعني كذي أو يكون كذي زين. These are in series. ليش؟ لأن هني عندنا only 1 point of connection. 1 point. So this is in series. This is how you can always identify whether it is in series or in parallel. قصدك هني؟ لو كان في ويا parallel شيء يصير series. ما فهمت سؤالك. لما تشرح سؤالك مريم, did you understand the point why these two are in parallel now? Why these two are in parallel? لأن they are connected together at 2 different points. يعني هني في point وهني في point. تمام ممتاز. The series بيكون بس 1 point بينهم. يعني متوصلين directly في بعض. Parallel بيكونوا موصلين من صوبين. سجاد فهمت اللي قصدك إياه. We will cover that بعد in a bit. You will see what I mean. زين. يعني مثلا هني إذا كان عندنا resistor, we are not even going to look at it. We're going to look at these two first. We will reduce it. بعدين we will look at it. هاي المفروض اللي تسويه سجاد. بس it's okay. Let us solve this question and we will look at that a bit more in a little bit. إنزين. So we're looking at this red part now. So we know now that these are in parallel. So now we are going to solve just for these two. بس بنركز على هالاثنين and we will reduce them. So parallel R4 and R5. هذا السمبل معناته parallel in electrical يعني engineering عادة يوم نسوي كذي قصدنا يعني parallel. alright. ف R4 و 5 equivalent resistor مال R4 and R5 بنسمي R4 5. What is it? R4 times R5 divided by R4 plus R5 لأنه we're looking at only two resistors. We're only looking at these two. We're not including anything else yet. احنا بس قاعدين نطالع على الاثنين. alright. So because they are in parallel, we can apply this equation and we can just substitute the values now. R4 is 7. R5 is 8. And 8? A is 8 over 7 plus 8. تمام. Just 1 minute. مشكلة ما عندي الأجوبة هنا. إنزين. ف R45 is equal to just 1 second. and أنا حليتهم هذول already. 3.73. إنزين. 3.73 ohms. تمام. Just 1 second. Let me open up the solution عشان ما أضيع وقتي بس calculating every 2 seconds. Alright. ف 3.73 ohms when you solve this. So what does this mean? This means الحين هذا السيركت اللي عندنا إياه. I'm just going to copy paste it down here again. This circuit now احنا we reduce these two لا فهذا شليناه هاي شليناه. اوكي. احنا عندنا resistor 3 هني. okay. And now we just have one resistor هني. Oh, let me do it this way. We have one resistor here, which is R4, 5. Now we combine these two لا in parallel. So we just combine them and the equivalent resistance ماله يعني هني this is equal to R4, 5. تمام. This is what this basically means. فاحنا سويناه. Now we remove that part اللي هو 4 و 5 separately and we combine them and it's equal to 3.73 ohms. تمام. This is how we simplified this. Is this clear so far? ما عليه. We will be doing this step over and over, so if it's not clear now, maybe the next time we do it, it will be clear. Now, we want to simplify الحين the next pair, which is these two. زين? Which is these two resistors. R3 and R45. مريم الحين انت ابغى تقولين لي are these in series or are they in parallel? Look at the connection point. Look at the connection point. How many connection points are there? Yes, exactly. من تحت it's not connected to R3. So it's only connected from the top part, one part of it. So these are in series. زين يعني another way I can draw the circuit. زين another way I can draw the circuit عندنا هني ال 8 ohm اقدر اخلي هاي R3 وهاي R45 يعني هاي R45 وهاي R3 زين A B R1 R2. This is another way I can redraw the circuit لأن شو هاي بس wire. These are just wires يعني I just move the wires around. So you can clearly see that these are in series. تمام? So series is very easy. Series R3 and R45 they are in series. R بنسميه 3 4 5 equivalent مالهم كلهم is going to be R3 plus R45. They are in series. So R345 بيساوي R3 is equal to 1.3 plus 3.73. R345 is going to be equal to 5.03 ohms. تمام? So what does that mean? If I want to redraw this circuit now, if I want to redraw it, احنا خلاص خلصنا من هذا تخلصنا من هذا. We found one single equivalent حقهم اثنيناتهم. Okay? So we can redraw it as this. انزين. I'm gonna redraw it like this عشان I want to explain a point. Okay? This is R3 4 5. خليني I do it in color. فهذا ال R345 اللي تونا طلعناه R345 which is equal to 5.03 ohm. Now keep in mind this is equal to me drawing the circuit like this. زين هاي A و B نفس الشيء إذا حطيت الريزستور هني نفس الفكرة بالضبط. Nothing has changed. يعني this let me put in the color عشان ما تخربطون. This is my R345. Okay, it's exactly the same thing. So this is R345 وهذيل R2 R1 and A B. تمام. Exactly the same thing. يعني see you can move the resistor around as long as it's on the same wires. يعني ما قاعد يتغير شيء. You're not disconnecting anything. ف إذا كذي أسهل لكم تشوفونه you can put it this way. If it's easier like this you can put it this way. It's all up to you. تمام. Now الحين we are gonna look at this part now. زين we're gonna be looking at this part now. Let me redraw it in this way a bit more clearly. أو خليني هنا أسوي هذا بس. هذا زين. 1 second. Let me redraw it here really quickly. I'm just redrawing it عشان يكون أوضح لكم الفكرة. هذا R345 اللي يساوي 5.03 ohms. Now we are going to look at the next two. These two resistors. زين. These two resistors الحين. We need to simplify them. Are they in parallel or are they in series? مريم, are they in parallel or are they in series? Exactly. ممتاز. parallel. Why؟ لأن عندنا two connection points. عندنا هني الconnections وهنا عندنا هني الconnections مالهم. So these are considered in parallel. So we could just start solving it now. So parallel R2 with R3 4 5. Since parallel نقدر نكتب إنه parallel. So R2 3 4 5 بيساوي R2 times R3 4 5 divided by R2 plus R3 4 5. تمام? So this is equal to R2 is 8. R2 is 8 times 5.03 over 8 plus 5.03. R2345 is equal to 3.09 ohms. All right. Now, if we want to redraw the circuit again, so we simplified these two. زين. بقى لنا الحين هني resistor اللي هو R2345 or which is equal to 3.09, or we could redraw it بهالطريقة بعد, which is not wrong, اللي هو كذي. زين, where this is R2345 and this is R1 A and B. Okay, it's the same thing. Again, we're just moving around wires. فالحين عندنا one last pair of resistors. They are in what? In series. Pretty sure everyone can see that they are in series. If you don't know why these are in series, you should let me know from now. Series R1 and R2, 3, 4, 5. And then let's call it RT. RT is equal to R1 plus R2, 3, 4, 5, لأن they are in series. So it's equal to 3 ohms plus 3.09. So our total is simply going to be equal to 6.09 ohms. فالحين الفاينل circuit يكون عندنا A resistor هني و B. هاي A و B. هذا RT which is equal to 6.09 ohms. تمام؟ And that's how you solve. Again, a quick recap. You start from the end اللي ما يكون فيه السورس الفولتج سورس مالكم, or in this case an open شو اسمه, an open يعني circuit or whatever. You start from there and you go one by one looking at one pair of resistors at a time, يعني two resistors at a time. ما تروحون تحاولون تطالعون R3 شو يخصه ما ادري شو, لا. Look at the furthest two and start simplifying it from there until you have a simple one resistor. Reduction for resistors is very very important. It's very important you know how to do this, لأن في قوانين بعدين بتتعلمونها اللي هي نورتن و Thevenin method وما ادري شو, where you will have to do this a lot to simplify the equation solving. You guys need to make sure you understand how, when they are in series, when they are in parallel, and how to do the reduction. And let's do this problem as well. قبل ما ندش في هذيل. I might leave these for another time, but I want to make sure that you guys understand the reduction process first before I go into everything else. انزين. لو تلاحظون الحين ال A will B are over here. زين, ال A and B. So you have to start, what did I say? From the furthest part, which is from this side. Let me redraw the circuit very quickly. So we have this resistor over here, resistor over here, resistor over here, resistor over here, A و B, resistor over here. انتهى الموضوع. هذا R1, R2, R3, R4, R5. And this is A and this is B. تمام? So these are just open-ended wires, ما فيهم شيء. Okay. They want us to find the total resistance just like before. Again, we're going to start by looking at this part. ليش this part? And it's the furthest part from where the source is. The furthest part from where the source is. Mariam, are these in series or in parallel? Think about it. Think about it. Are they in series or are they in parallel? Again, remember what was the rule I told you? How many ways are these connected? They're connected once here. They're connected once here, لا. صح ولا لا? Keep in mind, do not get confused just because you see this at the top instead of on the side. معناته they're not in parallel. They're connected at two separate points. زين, they're connected at two separate points. Remember, these are just wires, okay? يعني عادي ارسم لكم الريزستور كذي بعد. زين, اقدر اقول لكم هاي R1 R2. I can draw it like this. These are just wires. Okay, don't get confused لانه هو مربع او اذا هو curved او اذا هو سيده صاير. It's all the same. They are just a wire. Nothing is different. So these two are in parallel because they're connected at two different nodes to each other. زين, parallel. It's fine, Mariam. With practice, inshallah, you will get better and better at this. Just remember the rule. If they're connected at two nodes, it is parallel. If it is connected at a single node, they are in series. If they're connected to each other, that is. And then, for now we know they're in parallel. For R1 parallel R1 R2. شنو equation? RT is equal to RT is مو RT, let's call it لأن احنا مو بتوتال هني. R12 is going to be equal to R1 R2 over R1 plus R2. زين, I'm not going to put numbers. I just want to show the concept of it. يعني تحطون الأرقام مال resistors and you will get the final answer. وبعدين you will simplify this part. For this part is all going to go away. الله. 1 second. زين. وبيبقى لكم هني الريزستور هذا. Let me do it in a different color. بيبقى لكم بس الريزستور هني in green. Okay. And this is R1, 2. تمام. So this circuit has transformed into this circuit الحين. We have reduced it to this circuit. Again, we will do the exact same concept. We'll look at the next two. The two closest to each other are these two. زين. R12 and R3. Are they in series or are they in parallel? They have one node that is connected in between them, so they are in series. تمام. So series R12 and R3. فمعناته R123 is equal to R12 plus R3. Very simple. زين. And then this circuit is going to be simplified again. All right. We're going to get rid of all of this. عندنا resistor 4 هني. عندنا one more resistor هني. اللي هو شنو؟ let me do it color coded. اللي هو R123. R123. Again, don't get confused. You can put it up here as well. It's the same thing. لأن this is just a wire. يعني you can move around the wire. For R3 and R12, it has become reduced to one resistor, which is R123. Now we look at the next part, which is these two resistors. زين. They are in parallel, obviously. Why are they in parallel? Because they're connected at 2 points. They're connected at one here and another point down here. And then they're connected to each other at 2 points. R1, 2, 3 parallel with R4. R1, 2, 3, 4 is equal to R1, 2, 3 times R4 divided by R1, 2, 3 plus R4. Okay. Again, these are in parallel. Now we found our equivalent. The circuit is going to be simplified again. الحين circuit is just going to be simply like this. إنزين. I want you guys to tell me whether these two are in parallel or are in series. فالحين عندنا high A, high B. I should actually do it this way. Are these two in parallel or are they in series? أزرق هذا, this resistor over here. اللي هو R5 and R شو اسمه R1234 R1234 يلا parallel series parallel. سويت delete ها شفت I noticed ترى يعني سجاد بس ما بعلق. انت على اللي قبل انزين. So again what is the what is this the way to do it؟ تشوفون how are they connected to each other. من فوق they're not connected, it's open. من تحت there is only one connection point بس one point is connecting them, so they are in series. زين, that's it, very simple. Okay, so these two are in series. Okay, we solve it again in series of R1, 2, 3, 4 and R5. R total is going to be equal to R1, 2, 3, 4 plus R5. Yes, and that's R total. So now if we draw the final circuit, it's going to look something like this. سويتها الصغر ما أدري. زين. We have A, we have B, and we have a resistor, which is R total. A, B. بعد you can draw it this way. It doesn't matter where you put the resistor. A, B, أو تحطون الصوب الثاني, and this is RT. They are all the same. Remember, these are just wires. يعني تطولون wire, تقصرون wire, it doesn't matter at all as long as you're not changing the connections of the wires. تمام? And that's basically it for reduction. We have 10 more minutes. I want to try to cover this question very quickly. It looks big and scary, but I want to actually go through this now. وبعيدة يمكن بعد السيشن اللي جاي بعد مرة الكويشن هذا, لأن this is يعني this whole reduction there is a purpose behind it at the end of the day. زين. فالحين معطينا هالسيركت. اوكي. معطينا this circuit. resistor 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 battery plus minus. In a battery, plus is always the larger end, always, and the smaller end is a negative. A battery is a DC source. معطينا الفولتج يساوي 190 volts. And this is R1, which is 15 ohms. This is R2, which is 16 ohms. R3 is 47 ohms, and R4 is 9.2 ohms. Now, the 16 ohm and 47 ohms, are they in series or are they in parallel? How many connection points do they have? 1, 2. صح ولا لا? So they are in parallel. تمام? Because they have two connection points. 9.2 ohms. They have two connection points. They're connected to each other through two separate connection points. They are in parallel with each other. لا تعورون راسكم ال 15 وال 9.2, they're outside of the connection of these two for now. So these two are in parallel. تمام? So we can find their equivalent resistance. يعني الحين if we want to reduce this before we even solve the question, إذا بسوي له high reduction, I can reduce these two using the parallel rule. فبيكون عندنا هني 15 ohms. هني بيكون عندنا resistor reduced, زين, وهني بيكون عندنا بعد الريزستور الثاني اللي هو 9.2 ohms. عندنا الباتري مالنا هني plus minus. Current is going in that direction. Remember, current is always leaving the positive of the battery. Voltage is equal to 190 volts. And then we want to reduce this. We can simply reduce this into 1. They are in parallel. ف R بنسميه R equivalent مثلا يساوي 16 times 47 divided by 16 plus 47. And then so 16 times 47 divided by 16 plus 47. This is going to give us 11.94 ohms. All right. So this is 11.94 ohms. We just, again, we simplified these two parallel ones into one. الحين, these three resistors, what are they? Are they in parallel in series? هالثلاثة ويا بعض. They're right next to each other, so they are in series, exactly. Then, so now if we want to find R total, it's going to be equal to R1, which is 15, plus R2, which is the equivalent resistance, 11.94, plus R3, which is 9.2. So R total is equal to 15 plus 11.94 plus 9.2, which is 36.14 ohms. All right. لو تلاحظون أنا للحين ما حليت السؤال. أنا I'm just trying to do the reduction that we already did earlier. لأن I mean part of the question is going to ask you to find the total resistance. But even if we have a battery, يعني a voltage source, the way of solving is exactly the same. زين. وعندنا هاي الكرنت I. current I. نفس الكرنت I, which is not given. زين. عندنا ال R total, which is equal to 36.14. If you notice now, the same current I اللي هني ما تغير. It's the same place. It's the same current. We can find it across the total current from this circuit. صح ولا لا؟ عندنا voltage, عندنا الريزيستنس, بس نحتاج نحصل الكرنت. ف we simply apply V is equal to I R. This I الأخضر اللي بنسميه I total. زين, I total. Okay, it's going to be equal to V total times R total. V total times R total. Okay, so it's equal to أو IT is going to be equal to V total over R total اللي هو 190 volts over 36.14 ohms. زين. So I total, you can simply find it to be 190 divided by 36.14. It's 5.26 amperes. لو تلاحظون بعدني I'm not trying to solve any question. I'm just trying to show you the concept and why we are doing reduction. يعني الحين لو السؤال كان find the current I, this is how you'd find the current I. زين. خلينا نشوف شو الأسئلة الحين تسأل. Whatever we solve, we're just going to ignore. زين. فهني قاعد يقول the total resistance خلصنا. The total resistance is done. The total current supplied to the battery, it's done. طلعناه هني. This is the total current. Okay, part B. Okay, this was part A. Okay, now let's move on. The current flowing through resistor R1. This is now very important. Look at these three circuits. You have to understand now these three circuits. الحين, let me just grab the circuit and take it to the bottom. Just a reminder, this is R1, this is R23, and this is R4. Yes, okay. This is R23 اللي هو combination, and this is R4. الحين we have the total current. Then we have the total current going through the circuit. I total. Are these connected in series together again, or are they in parallel? They're in series. So this is a fully series circuit. There is no parallelism, صح? أصلا, how do you know? Follow the wire, follow the line. Okay, the current is not changing, current is not changing, current is not changing, current is not changing. لأن ما في wire يطلع له. For current to change, there has to be another wire and for it to go to another direction. Current is not changing and it comes back to the source. For what is the current that is going through R1? IR1. What is it equal to? It's equal to I total, صح ولا لا? Which is also equal to the current going through R23, both the combination مالهم, which is equal to the current that is going through R4. Let me call these I1, I2, I3, I4 عشان ما تتخربطون. So I1 is equal to I total equal to I3, 23 قصدي, equal to I4. صح ولا لا? Do you guys agree? Do you guys understand what I'm saying here? الفكرة إن this is a fully series circuit. There is no other wires for the current to go into. I'm not talking about the original circuit. بنرجع له بعد شوي. Talking about this reduced circuit. لأن للحين عندنا R1 in this circuit. It's the same R1. Nothing changed. We changed the R23, which we will look at later. But R1, nothing has changed. R4, nothing has changed. So R1 and R4, the current I1 and I4 is equal to I total, which is 5.26 amperes. So they have the same current flowing through them. تمام? Now, if we look at the original equation, circuit, this circuit over here, سامحوني شوي يعني الوقت قاعد يمر, بس I really want to explain this concept and I will re-explain it بعد المرة الجاية. If we look at I, this is I total. It's going through here. It's going through here. It's going through this. This is R1. This is R4. This is R2 اللي فوق صح؟ R2 اللي فوق R3 اللي تحت. This is R2 and this is R3. Okay? When is the current changing? When it reaches this point, this red point هني. Current is going into two directions. هاي أول واحد وهذا ثاني واحد. So here there is a difference in current that is going through R2 and R3. The current here is changing. ولكن الكرنت في R4 يرجع للفول total current لأن they come back and combine again. Alright? So the current across R1 and the current that is going through R4 are equal. تمام? So the next question was the current flowing through the resistor R1. Done. The voltage drop across the resistance R1. الحين, this is where everything changes a little bit. هني, we know that the current is the same, but we know that voltage is changing. How so? If this is our voltage, الأزرق, هاي اللاين الأزرق. Then, this is voltage. Until here, the voltage is the same. It's 190 volts. This is all 190 volts. It's equal to V. هني بعد لأن it's going through a component, there is going to be a voltage drop. This is a voltage drop. Voltage drop. Voltage drop. صح ولا لا? Until it goes to the next components. بعدين بعد مرة قاعد يتغير. Voltage drop. Voltage drop. هني كامل. Remember this is the same line, so it's the same voltage all the way up till here. زين الفولتج ما يتأثر باللاينز, يتأثر بالcomponents. وبعدين بعد مرة يرد يتغير هني. فthese are all different voltages. تلاحظون it changes in voltage. It's the same هني حق R2 R3 لأن they're in parallel. If you notice the red and the red, it's the same voltages, the same voltage drop. Red minus orange, red minus orange. It's the same voltage drop. ولكن when it's going to R1, it is changing. When it's going to compared to this one, يعني compared to the source. When it's going to R4, it's changing compared to the source. So the voltage is changing. So the simple way to do this is V equals IR. احنا what do we want? We want V1. نستخدم I1. نستخدم R1. I1 we already know I1 is equal to I total, which is equal to 5.26 amperes. R1 is given. R1 is equal to 15 ohms. So V1 is simply going to be 15 times 5.26. I custom, but it's the same thing. Ampere 5.26 الكرنت قصدي times the resistance. Okay, so 15 times 5.26. This is going to be 78.9 volts. تمام? This is the whole idea. This is how you will solve for every single part of this question. حصلنا الحين الفولتج 1 78.9 volts. We now know that the voltage across R1 is 78.9 volts. الفولتج كامل اللي هو 190 minus the red part is equal to this. تمام? So we found part D. The voltage drop across the resistor. هذا. Across the resistor. Now the current going into R2. If you notice here, the current is changing. The current now is changing. تمام? I will cover this part لأن the time is getting very long and here I have to explain a new concept. So inshallah I will cover this part in next week's session. But I need you guys to understand إن الvoltage إنزين it is always changing when it goes through a component and the current is changing when it goes through number of different wires. All right? Sorry وايد طولت عليكم اليوم يعني ahead of the session. I wanted to complete all of week 4 بس خلصنا almost all of it. It's just these questions concepts are left, which is exactly the same thing. Inshallah on Sunday, I guess, inshallah I will be doing another session يعني continuation مال this and at the same time I'm gonna ببدأ السؤال من أول وجديد ترى. إنزين